You're going to experience people who cross your boundaries, people who treat you like shit. Why? Because it's so easy to conclude life is not fair. But here's the question that nobody asks. Let's be honest, life does not seem fair, does it? You see it everywhere. The hardest workers aren't always the most successful people. The kindest people often get taken advantage of. And the people who deserve love the most, they're the ones still single. Meanwhile, the cheaters, the manipulators seem to glide through life, always getting what they want. How many good, kind-hearted people do you know who died young of cancer and heart attacks and maybe even suicide? And how many selfish, toxic people just keep going, seemingly untouched by life's hardships? When you see this, it's so easy to conclude life is not fair. But here's the question that nobody asks. Fair compared to what? Because if you're measuring fairness by material success and longevity of relationships and comfort and worldly achievements, then yeah, life looks incredibly unfair. But what if you compare life to something deeper, something a little bit more spiritually fundamental? From the spiritual perspective, life is actually incredibly fair, just not in the way that most people think about fairness. Life doesn't measure fairness, spiritually speaking, by how much money you make or how many likes you get or whether you're the good guy who wins in the end or whether you become a billionaire. Life measures fairness purely by growth, by evolution, by how much you're learning the lessons that you as a spirit came here to this plane of existence called Earth to learn. Think of it this way. If your soul's goal in this lifetime is to develop more self-love, then life is going to place you in the exact situations that will force you to practice self-love. And that usually means you're going to encounter a lot of people who don't love you the way that you feel like you deserve or the way that you see other people being loved. You're going to experience people who cross your boundaries, people who treat you like shit. Why? Because those situations are part of your spiritual growth syllabus. That's your coursework for the lesson that you signed up for. And this is where most people get stuck because we think that inner work is about reading self-help books and talking to our therapist and having breakthroughs during these quiet moments of reflection while we're drinking tea in the morning. But the real work happens in the messy, uncomfortable, day-to-day, real-life moments. When somebody offends you and disrespects you and you choose for the first time not to let it slide. Or when you finally walk away from the relationship that's been draining you and sucking your soul for years. Or when you decide to speak up at work for the first time, even though your heart's pounding and your voice is shaking. That's what the inner work looks like in action. And life is relentlessly fair in giving us an abundance of these kinds of opportunities to practice and to grow from. You're not the only one following a syllabus, right? Everybody that you encounter in your life is a soul who is on their own path, playing their role in your curriculum, and you're playing your role in their curriculum, which means somebody has to play the role of the abuser and the narcissist and the gaslighter, the negligent parent. Somebody has to be the manipulator and the person who violates boundaries. Not because life is cruel or because they have bad karma, but because that's how the lesson gets administered. It's like a real world, real life simulation. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about my family? I didn't ask for my family to be like this. From a ground level perspective, it absolutely feels that way. But again, from the spiritual perspective, you're the producer, you're the casting director, you're the screenwriter, you're the lead actor in the drama of your life, and you played a role in casting every single character who's here to help you grow. Friend, family, stranger, partner, and otherwise. And how do you know when you're graduating from a lesson? Because you start finding yourself less and less attracted to the situations that once triggered the hell out of you. The toxic relationships, the manipulative coworkers, the draining friendships, they all start falling away, or you start finding opportunities and the courage to make different choices. Not because the world changed, but because you changed. And when you truly integrate the lesson that you came into this life to learn, life doesn't need to keep teaching it. It moves you on to the next class. It's like learning to do a handstand. You don't master a handstand in one class. You may learn a little bit about a handstand in that CrossFit class that you took, and then you watch some YouTube tutorials and you practice a little bit more. And then you bump into a gymnast somewhere and you ask them for tips. And each attempt teaches you something new. And once you finally are able to hold that handstand, you don't just stop learning. You move on to something like a muscle up or a crow pose or some other exercise that builds upon the foundation of what you've already learned. Life works the same way. The lesson ends when the learning ends, and the learning ends when you've embodied the change, not just understood how to do a handstand intellectually, but you can actually stick a handstand. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds exhausting. Do we ever get a break? The break comes when you stop resisting the process, when you accept that life isn't punishing you, but rather it's teaching you, it's coaching you, it's encouraging you. That's when the struggle starts to soften. That's when the heaviness starts to lift. Because when you approach life as a classroom rather than a battleground, that's when everything changes. You stop asking questions like, why is this happening to me? And you start asking questions like, what is this teaching me? From that perspective, life becomes less about winning and losing and more about evolving. It's less about fairness in the material world and more about fairness in the soul's journey. So, is life fair? If you're only looking at the scoreboard of worldly success, no, it's not fair at all. But if you're looking at your spiritual growth, your resilience, your capacity to love yourself and other people more deeply, then yeah, absolutely, life is incredibly fair. You are exactly where you need to be right now, learning exactly what you came here to learn. And the sooner you embrace that, the easier life is going to get. So what do you think? Does this resonate with your experience? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to dive deeper into this spiritual perspective, I got a whole playlist of other videos from the spiritual perspective, which you can find in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Just FYI, we post a new video almost every day, so make sure you comment and subscribe below so you don't miss out on anything. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're really going to love this one as well. And if you ever want to see a playlist of all of my podcasts or all of the plot twists or any other category of videos, you can find links to those in the description below.